The big three of modern hip hop are no more. I'm talking about Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar. And as of a couple days ago, Kendrick Lamar has denounced this label. His surprise feature on Future and Metro Boomin's new album completely disassembled Drake and J. Cole, mostly going at Drake. But where did this whole big three situation even come from? They got this label justifiably so. All three of these rappers came up around the same time, at the dawn of the 2010s. Might I say the golden era of rap? And throughout their entire careers, they've not only dropped amazing music, but remained as some of the most talked about and the most influential artists in the game, period. And about 15 plus years since they've come out, these three are looked at as legends at this point, as veterans. But rap fans seem to always compare the three. Who's the best one? I even put up a poll, and this is what you guys said. And together, they've released 19 studio albums. Yeah, I'm talking about studio albums, so no mixtapes, no EPs, no collaboration albums, none of that. Yes, if you're reading this as Too Late is classified as a mixtape, so we're not talking about it. And I took it upon myself to rank these 19 albums from worst to best. Of course, here at What's the Buzz, we appreciate discussion, so make sure to leave your comments too. And also, bro, we're so close to 100,000 subscribers. If you're not subscribed, click it. Anyway, this is me ranking the big three albums from worst to best. And at number 19, I have J. Cole's Cole World, The Sideline Story from 2011. I'll preface by saying this, even the worst album on this list, it's not bad. This era of J. Cole just meant nothing special to me. If you check the track list of this album, there are some inspirational tracks, there are some more popular tracks, but overall, the production and the rapping on this album is pretty meh. I vividly remember not being a real J. Cole fan until he turned up the heat a little bit a couple years later. And by that, I mean just improving his pen game, improving his production, etc. This is the weakest album any of the big three have put out. Number 18, I'm going with Drake's Honestly Nevermind from 2022. For what Drake was trying to accomplish with this album, I think it's not the worst thing I've heard. Personally, I think he attempted to break into a new market for his music, trying to reach a new audience with the more dance and electronic related music, I guess. I remember when it dropped, I made a video predicting that this album would blow up in Europe. I was wrong. It kind of just came and went. I feel like Drake just swept it under the rug and released Her Loss after that. And number 17, we have another J. Cole album, Born Sinner from 2013. This goes out to the J. Cole fans. Right now, you might think, oh my god, this guy's a hater. No, just stick through. Trust me, I have reasons for all of this. But this album gives me similar feelings to his debut album. Just nothing special coming from Cole. But this one's even worse because I feel like he was trying to do something more with it. I'm mostly just impressed with some of his flows, some of the production, but there's a lot of questionable lyrics on this album, most notably on the intro track. You gotta come back to 2013 with me. I mean, this was the same day that two other more experimental and more interesting rap albums came out. The same day. So yeah, Born Sinner just kind of fell flat. Number 16, we got Drake's debut album, Thank Me Later from 2010. Some of these songs are the reason I'm a Drake fan these days. Songs like Miss Me and Over and Fancy are just etched into my brain forever. So you might ask, why is this so low? And the reason is not really Drake's fault. It's just the sound of this album is pretty outdated. Drake was still pulling a lot from Lil Wayne and Kanye on this album. You could really hear it on some of the tracks, but it's an okay album overall. At number 15, I'm going with Nothing Was the Same by Drake from 2013. It's one of Drake's softer albums, and it's really good background music for when you're like breaking up with your first girlfriend or something. A lot of spacey, cloudy instrumentals, which was pretty novel for the time, but I don't think Drake did the most he could with those. He was really leaning hard into his nasally voice on that one, but I'm pretty indifferent to this album. It's like non-offensive pop rap, and it's okay. But I will say, Wu-Tang Forever and Pound Cake are some of Drake's best songs. I swear, I'm looking at my script right now and this wasn't made up. At number 14, I have 2014's 2014 Forest Hills Drive by J. Cole. I kind of understand why a lot of people consider this a classic. I mean, it was the first time J. Cole clicked for me. I think it clicked for himself around this time too, because I feel like he's been playing around with this sound since. I know some people that think this is J. Cole's debut album because the sound of it is so distant from his previous two. And with this album, J. Cole kind of assumed the position of a top-level rapper who just does everything at his own pace. It's not too artsy or thought-provoking or forward-thinking. It's just very comfortable and a little bit relatable. He did go 5 times platinum with no features, so there's that. And number 13, I have 2018 Scorpion by Drake. The album where Drake threw literally everything at the wall to see what sticks. And to be honest, a lot did stick on that wall. It's his biggest album by like 500 million streams. And it had a lot of great cuts on it. The first disc in particular, a lot of rap-centric tracks. You got classic conversational Drake, you got like harder songs. And some of these songs were very influenced by the SoundCloud era that was fading away at that point. But then you look at the same wall that he threw shit at, and then you look at the bottom of it, and you see a goopy, boring mess of R&B pop slop that he put on disc 2. And the stuff that was like sorta okay is slowly dripping off the wall. Okay, I'm sorry about the imagery. But this disc did give us Nice for What, so that's a timeless track. At number 12, I have 2012's Take Care by Drake. The general sappiness of this album was what turns me off from joining the rest of you and calling this album a classic. Like, Drake's never been an amazing singer, and you can really kind of tell on some of these songs. He was pretty fresh to it considering how much he was like using it as a crutch on this album. But the reason why I would put this album above Scorpion is because of the general consistency in songwriting. In a way, it's Drake's most conceptual record. It's a heartbroken man that's currently becoming wealthy and transitioning into that life and kind of saying goodbye to his previous. It makes sense. I will say though, the instrumentals on this album are top notch. There's not a bad beat on this whole thing. At number 11, I have 2023's For All the Dogs by Drake, 3 in a row. Fat D is the biggest shock in Drake's discography. By no means should a 2023 album from Drake, especially with how prolific he's been the last few years with releases, still sound this good. From this album forward, I like all these albums a lot. On this album, it's like he suddenly started nailing things that were his weak point up until this point, like his melodic songs before lacking melodies. But on Fat D, he's killing it overall. I mean, there's a lot of filler, don't get me wrong, but overall it's a great listen. Even the rapping on this album is great, especially on the deluxe tracks. I just wish the feature list was a little bit more strong. Like, Yeet and Lil Yachty are cool, but you can't tease us with a J. Cole collab and then not have anything else compared to it. We've entered the top 10 here. At number 10, I have Section 80 by Kendrick Lamar from 2011. Bro, young 2011 Kendrick Lamar had more fire in his belly than these two did for most of their career, in my opinion. Although, looking back at Section 80, I don't really love it front to back. Of course, there are some well-written tracks here and some popular tracks, but in general, this album feels like an appetizer for Good Kid, Mad City. My favorite part of Section 80, looking back, is Kendrick experimenting a lot with his voice. He has a very layered register. He can go nasally, he can go deep voice, and he's been really trying out different things on this album, particularly on the hooks or when he's singing. And this experimentation with his voice is what garnered him this standout style he's been having in the field of rap. Moving on to number 9, it's J. Cole's KOD from 2018. Man, people treat KOD like it's the last slice in the J. Cole bread box. Real talk, like, who actually uses a bread box? What the fuck? But this album is a product of one of the most entertaining times in rap, the SoundCloud era. KOD was basically a mockery or a response to a lot of rappers and the topics they were rapping about this time. It was like a light imitation of people such as Lil Pump, I guess. But Cole's attempt to guise the more intelligent and introspective tracks behind tracks like ATM is a pretty interesting thing that he did. It's like he tried to drag these people in to listen to his album and then educate them at the same time. Now, I know that Cole came off as like the old man trying to give advice to people that won't listen to him, but he did end up right about a lot of stuff he was talking about. Moving on to number 8, we have 2016's Views by Drake. In retrospect, this album is pretty underrated in Drake's catalog. Yeah, I know the album's more bloated than me when I eat a Papa John's pizza by myself a Friday night at 10 p.m. But this was the last time Drake actually tried to make music that sounds like the level he's at. Just listen to the intro song. And I'm usually a hater of Drake's more poppier songs, but he was nailing it on this album. Feel No Ways, Controla, even One Dance and Too Good. Bro, Hotline Bling, woo! Yeah, this album's great. It's worth a revisit. It's definitely better than you remember it. Number 7, we have another Drake album, and it's actually my favorite Drake album, and a lot of you clowned me for this. It's Certified Lover Boy from 2021. I've been crucified to no end because of this take, but as the kid's been saying, I'm standing on business. Hear me out. He's once again, as he's been doing on all of his recent albums, throwing everything at the wall. It's just that on this album, a lot of that stuff ended up sticking a little bit longer. Yeah, some of the lyrics smell bad, really bad, but the fun songs are really fun. Way Too Sexy is fun. Just admit it's fun. Fair Trade and No Friends in the Industry are really fun tracks. And the R&B based songs are pretty okay as well. This album also has Drake's best intro song ever. It's by no means perfect, but it's the Drake album I'll choose. Number 6, it's Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers from 2022. And this album's had me torn since it dropped, honestly. Because overall, You can consider this Kendrick's best album, period. Just based on how brutally raw and honest it is, it's really not something we see in rap too much, because rap is the genre where everyone's the best. Everyone will have intercourse with your spouse. But that's one of the problems I have with this album. I can't go back to it too much. Music to me, again, this is a privileged thought, but it's escapism. From when I want to escape from real life issues, I listen to music and kind of like detach myself from it. But when the music starts drawing parallels between my life and my experiences, I get a little bit uneasy. Like, how'd you know that one, Kendrick? But all I'll say is this album specifically needs to be fully digested to be loved. He threw an N95 on there and a Die Hard on there for the charts and the streams, but even those songs have a lot of food for thought. If you're open with being honest with yourself, you'll love this album. At number 5, I have For Your Eyes Only by J. Cole. Am I wrong for considering this album a lo-fi album? I know it's not exactly, but it has that aesthetic and I kind of love it. J. Cole's rapping felt very stream of consciousness on this thing. Like, he wasn't trying too hard to deliver a message. He was kind of just telling stories. The beats were simple yet punchy, but also relaxing. It's an interesting experience and I love how short and sweet it is. It does build up to the title track at the end being longer, and the whole storyline behind it. Storytelling wise, this is Cole at his best. And he mastered something that Kendrick and Drake can't really do, is the simple yet effective approach. Even a song like Folding Clothes feels like he kind of just made it on a whim. And it works. It feels more approachable. It feels more real. This man is the 41st most streamed artist of all time, period. He shouldn't be able to make songs like this. Basically, the album just feels like an honest conversation with someone. It's cool. Number 4, once again, we got J. Cole with The Off Season from 2021. Take everything positive I said about J. Cole so far and turn it up to 10. That's how good The Off Season is. This motherfucker is rapping his ass off on this thing. Like, to the point you can't even compare his old writing to this. With that, I'll say J. Cole's probably the most improved player of the big 3 since they started. Although, other than some new topics about fatherhood, overall the concept of the album is pretty basic to what he's normally doing. But those topics are now served on a golden platter with sauteed bars, slowly roasted beats, and features. Cole finally got some features. And with this album being this good and the recent Kendrick shots, there's a fire under Cole's ass to be even better. For entering the top 3, I have Kendrick Lamar's Damn from 2017. The fact that Kendrick dropped 3 classics in a row and this one's the worst one by like a wide margin is telling. Of course, that's not me saying this album's weak at all. But there's not much that hasn't been said about Damn. But I guess one thing I'll really emphasize on this is the sequencing of this project. Kendrick Lamar created the gold standard for album sequencing with Damn. The way songs flow into each other and the energy picks up and comes back down and picks up again, and the sound of it is just evolving. It's just such a captivating listen. And the way the album goes from like the simple building blocks of life, DNA, to feeling like God by the end of it, it's just like, mwah, how did you think of that? He did go more commercial on it, but he kept it himself. For that, I love it. And number 2, we have 2012's Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. This is the album that made me realize that the younger generation has the ability to change music. It's not just seasoned veterans dropping classics all the time. Kendrick changed rap with this album. It made everyone try harder to make better albums, at least for that time period. Remember how I said it was the golden era? I'm telling you, everyone was trying hard. Like, look at Tyler's albums, Rocky's albums, Drake's albums, Cole's albums. Like, everyone picked up the pace after this album came out. It's a movie. It's shocking at times. It's entertaining. It's fear-inducing. It's intimate. It's how you create an album with a multitude of ideas. And when the concept of the album is the life of a young guy who's intelligent but troubled, you just get a classic set of tracks that are completely timeless. This album will go down in history. I mean, it already has. And at number 1, as some of you might have guessed, it's To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. T-Pap, man. It's the least accessible Kendrick album, the least pop-friendly album, the least mainstream album. Yet to true hip-hop fans, this is one of the greatest pieces of work ever made. But I won't bore you with the same details you've already heard, the commentary about racial injustice, the genre fusing he was doing on this album. But I just personally want to point out how privileged I am to get to listen to an album like this and truly enjoy it. I can take this album with all of its morals and its truths and its sounds and enjoy it as a white hip-hop fan. I can groove to the tracks, I can sing along, everything. But earlier I said how Mr. Morale is a tough listen because it draws parallels to my life. But with T-Pap, I'm considering more as a educational tool, as an informative tool about the adversities and fears I'll never truly face. And to put those ideas and emotions in a 78-minute hip-hop album that's beautiful and digestible and fun to listen to, it's a historical feat many activists dream of doing. And that's the list. That's my worst to best of the big three's albums. Do I think these three guys still have potential to make their best album? Maybe. On the fence with Kendrick, on the fence with Drake. J. Cole, I'm rooting for him. Like I said, let me know what you guys think. Make sure to subscribe. 100,000 is on the horizon. Appreciate you. What's the Buzz is out.